Welcome. I'm Debbie Pokornik, and this lovely lady with me is my wonderful partnerpreneur and the gifted channeler for these gatherings, Susan Hoskins. Since June 7th, 2023, we have been playing in Sweet Tea Channeling. In a recent meeting with our guide Christopher, we were asked to provide some sweet tea treats, sharing some of the nuggets that have been channeled and then heart bouncing how we can live that in Hoomadhi, which is the reality that we are creating right here where we live, right now. Christopher is willing to come in and share more insights on the nuggets when it feels appropriate. So we are quite excited for that. As a result, instead of our usual introduction, this one will be very brief. If this is the first Sweet Tea channeling that you are watching, we encourage you to go back and enjoy at least one of the previous introductions and channelings, especially if you have questions about what we are doing. We have already opened sacred space for this gathering, and we just want to remind you to call in your own spirit guides to assist in pulling out what is most important for you from what comes through. Anything I forgot to add there, Susan?
No, beautiful, Debbie.
Awesome. Would you like to start with the first nugget?
Sure. And actually, I'm being guided to combine two of the nuggets into one. There is much to do to dream a new existence into being. And that existence is what we call Hoomadhi. But if not us together, then who? And if not now, then what? That's the first nugget that jumped out. But then this one was kind of the answer to the question. Well, how do we begin? And it is, you are meant to embody and express as you all that is as you.
Indeed. If not us, who? And if not now, when?
When?
You know. So it's really interesting to me. When we spoke with Christopher, Christopher said, we want you to really take these nuggets and then play with them as if you're in Hoomadhi. I thought we were doing that. And so I find it really interesting because it's asking us, in my opinion, to completely change how we look at something like that and not talk about what we know about those words, but instead, how does that look in this reality that we are actually creating right now?
Oh, I love that. And I love to begin again with, what does it look like if you are embodying and expressing as you all that is as you?
Yes. So how do you do that in Hoomadhi?
Beautiful, beautiful. That leads into a segue of a little tidbit of what happened yesterday. And you and I were talking about it, and I won't go into detail. I will just say that I found myself in a situation where someone I love deeply had broken an agreement we had made, a very, very important, almost a life agreement, and blatantly and willingly did that. And so when we sat down to process it, the natural me embodying as me, embodies by trying to talk about it in depth and share and understand why this person might have done that. That's me. But a very interesting thing happened as this was beginning, because the me, particularly the former me, could have gone on for hours trying to make my point. In other words, trying to do it with the mind. And all of a sudden I got the message about being in Hoomadhi. How do you do this in Hoomadhi? And I went, how do I do this in Hoomadhi? And all of a sudden I went, yeah, drop to your heart. Yeah, just drop to your heart. And that's exactly, I stopped the conversation and I said, I'm just going to express to you from my heart how I feel. And then that's all I have.
Mm.
And I hope you take it into your heart. But with that, I'm done. In other words, I'm done with being able to express how I feel. I don't have to go on for hours and hours and hours to have you get my point. So I did that in a few short sentences, strictly from my heart. And then what was the most amazing thing was not that all of a sudden, oh, he got it and understood. No, it's that I was done. I was complete. So that's one thing I can share about being as me in this.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Which is interesting because in your past, who you thought was you
Mm-hmm.
wasn't, right? That would have been more, I guess, of your kind of, we'll say ego self, although I don't want people to think I'm saying that
Right.
ego in itself is a really bad thing. So if we were to break that down,
Kind of it was the way I'd been trained, if you will, or the way I'd been programmed on how you deal with situations in my counseling role, perhaps. Let's get down to the nitty gritty. And it was just that it was just meaningless
right.
because
Um,
all that
sorry,
mattered was here's what I'm feeling from my heart.
right. And so if we were to break it down, that's kind of you noticed the emotion, you acknowledged the emotion first, and then you kind of just went into your heart,
Exactly.
right? And I'm thinking that this Hoomadhi that we're creating would be very much about that, not seeing that person as what they have done wrong, but in that, or no, there is no right or wrong in Hoomadhi, but not seeing the thing that felt like an affront or a big problem, but instead just seeing what happened as the moment that is what happened. So therefore, let me tell you what is going on for me, and then moving on.
Well, it's really an interesting thing because it's integrating what is important. I mean, the issue that we were addressing yesterday was really important. So it wasn't something that you could just go dismiss and it's just all fine. It wasn't fine. And so it needed to be addressed. It was that important. And when somebody breaks an agreement with you that is clearly understood, for me, that is breaking a boundary. And so the matter needed to be addressed, but it didn't need to be addressed in the old way.
Mm-hmm.
That's what happened for me. So it simply was, hey, dude, everything I've already said before a year ago. So all I really want to do is just be done and drop down in my heart and just say, this
Right.
is how I feel.
So do you think that Christopher would like to come in right now and maybe talk a little bit more about boundary enforcement, how boundary enforcement might look in Hoomadhi?
Sure, let's see.
Okay.
Don't mind. Okay. You are on the right track, ladies. It is important that you have agreements with those you love about what works with your heart connection. And by that, we mean what works in living everyday life in harmony. And so it is fine to have heart centered agreements that work for both of you. It is fine to call them out when one does not honor that agreement. Always understanding two things: that all heart agreements are fluid, for what is happening in the moment and under the circumstances. So, a heart agreement between two people who love each other can be always modified or changed to fit the situation. And yes, you always have the right to speak from your heart when you feel that has been broken, but always with the understanding that your love for one another is not conditioned upon a certain behavior or response. So the love is, and the love is all, and the agreement is how you work in harmony. Does that help?
Mhm. So if I'm understanding you correctly, the unconditional love is the most important
Mhm.
piece there. And then from that, quite naturally, it feels like we would go into our heart and flow from that space of, here's what I need you to know.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. And that it's perfectly fine to have sacred agreements with one another that honors the truth of the other person. And it is in order to live in harmony with understanding in Hoomadhi, in the flow.
Mhm. I think that live in harmony piece is going to come up many times because often when we picture living in harmony, we picture it from the perspective of what we want. Like, if you want to live in harmony with me, this is how I see it. I
Mm-hmm.
see it going. That is beautiful. I feel very content with that nugget. How about you?
Beautiful. Your turn.